Greetings, tech students. Thanks for tuning in to our online class today. This is for the lesson 1.2, and you should find this PowerPoint in D2L, and go ahead and download a copy of that to your computer, and you will be needing to copy and paste out of there. While you're in D2L, today we will also talk a little bit about the program development plan. So if you didn't get the template last time, you want to go ahead and get a copy of that. You will have one of those due this week. Go ahead and get yourself a copy of the PLD toolkit. We will talk about that as well. That file is something that's not due until the very end of class. That is the end of the semester, but we start working on it and using it as we go along. And so today it's mentioned for the first time. If you haven't watched this Where Are My Files video and you kind of wonder where your Python files actually sit on your computer, you might want to take a look at that. But anyway, make sure you have a copy of both of these for today as well as our main lesson PowerPoint. Okay, so this video is just to get us started. Our main comments are going to be on formatting once again and on the input command. Okay? So first of all, checking in is just wanted to say that we have 27 people in the class. This class is very strong. So I'm glad to see that a lot of people are getting to know each other and working together. And, you know, when you struggle, that could be just the ticket, is to have somebody to bounce off ideas. Again, you don't want to just copy code because you want to make sure you understand it. But you do want to work with each other and find out, how did someone else approach this problem? Usually there's more than one way of doing the same thing. Okay, as far as feedback goes, you should be getting individual comments from me as well as possibly individual video, and then I may be sending a link to a group video that is a solution to the problem. I'm struggling a little bit with that because I started to put key videos on D2L. Every time I do that, D2L screams at me and tells me not to upload videos. So in all likelihood, you're going to get some, you know, further direction for me that the videos are actually sitting on Google Drive. That's probably going to work out better. And what's happening is that when everyone has submitted a certain assignment, I go ahead and publish the key videos. But in some cases, if you, let's say you submit earlier, but I think, you know, you could really benefit from watching the key video, I may send you a link to it. Okay? Now, if you seem to do really well with the problem, I may not send you that link to the key video until it's published for everyone to see. So if at any point in time you'd like to see how I worked a problem, you know, and I didn't send you the link to the key video, just let me know and I'll probably go ahead and send you the link. But eventually the links will be published so that when we get to test time, you will have examples of you know, code that produced the example output. So you'll know how I did those problems. Again, they're just one solution, but sometimes it's helpful. Okay, let's take a look at one extra thing, is that what if you get a note that seems like it's more of an FYI. In that case, it's probably not counting off from your grade now, but it could in the future. So do pay attention to those FYIs or notes. You know, one of the most common ones is, are you following the conventions to have a doc string at the top? And what's in the doc string? It should have the author, the date, and the description. Should use the long comment format, and are you using short comments throughout to explain? These are not very informative here. It really should say it even a little bit more, but not too long for those short comments. Okay? Another thing that I've been giving an FYI on is maybe you're using extra code that you don't need to. Here would be a case for that. Let's say I have some adding, and I just go ahead and I just want to make sure. Sure. Okay. So you might get a comment with extra parentheses, and in general we want to stay away from code that we don't need. And so that's why I'm giving some of those hints. You know, another one that I've seen is where you use the format function, but you went ahead and did an extra string conversion on it. Okay, and again, it works, but you could do without it. So this is following the less is more principle. We would prefer not to have extra code. I've even, you know, definitely had comments from students saying, in the solution video, you have more code than you need. Thanks for letting me know. And it's something that we can all learn from each other on how do you get the most clean, simple code possible will be the best. Okay? So when you get FYIs, they aren't being used for grading right now. In the future, they probably will be. Okay, moving on now. Here's a good question for you. Which is a more exact match to the file name, bus_fare.py? Would that be A, bus_fare.py, but the B is capital? Would that be gobbledygook.py, or would that be neither? We had the answer below, so there's not much suspense. Basically, it's neither. Because when we see a question like, which is a more exact match, we know right away that's a trick question because exactness is not a question of degree. It's either exact or it's not. And so I'm bringing this up because it's a rare quality, and yet it's a quality that programmers need. We had 6 file names for Lesson 1 between the lab and the homework. Very few people, very few out of 27 had all 6 exactly right for the file names. Even those who had almost all right would have maybe 1 character out of place. So that is a sort of habit that we're trying to cultivate and grow in programming, whereas in a writing class even, you can have some toleration for characters being out of place. This is like a writing class, but you know, the rules are even more strict. So that's why I lean on you about things like file names and using spell check. Don't have extra spaces when you don't need them. We're just trying to be as clean as we can with that. So make sure to take advantage of copy and paste when you can, and find and replace. So when you make a change throughout your program, let's say you change a variable name, it's better to use find and replace so that you can avoid typos or avoid missing one instance of that variable name that you're replacing. Okay? So we try to use automation when we can to avoid simple things like typos and spelling. All right. Now let's move on to the question of data types so far. So we have had string, which is anything that's in quotation marks, and that includes when we put numbers into quotation marks. Those are now strings. So it makes a big difference what you can and can't do with the data. We're going to really get to appreciate that as we go forward. Certain methods, certain functions, they only work for certain data types. So when you have a string, it opens some doors, closes others. With integers and floats, they're more similar, both numeric, both you can do math with them, and so they kind of go together. As we learn the input function a little bit more, and the input function only takes string data, it presents some really interesting challenges with numbers, and we will move pretty directly into trying to validate what people put into the input prompt to make sure if we need it to be a number, it really is a number. Okay? And it's a challenge because with integers and floats, they are numbers, but they have things like negative signs, and they have things like decimals, and those are a little bit in a gray area as far as whether they're string data, or are they numeric? And how do we make it work the way we need to have them interpreted as numbers? With Boolean, that's either true or false. The book so far has only mentioned it briefly at the end of Chapter 1. I capitalized it because true and false are both initially capitalized for Python. Your programs won't accept true and false with lowercase. So as we move forward, next time Boolean's really going to come to the forefront. The other data type we will be seeing soon, lists, and the cousin of the list is the tuple. And that will come up in Chapter 4. Okay, so when we talk about types of data, it's a category of data, and it has a lot to do with what you will be able to use that data for within Python. That's separate from formatting. So when we have an integer, we can take it and we can format it to look like it's a float. Okay, that's completely separate from the data type. So I just wanted to go over that with you one more time. Essentially, when we apply a formatting code, we are taking data and we are putting it into a string format at that point. So it will look like a float, but it really is an integer behind the scene, if that's what you started with. All right. Now this next point goes over to our toolkit. Our book does not deal with the date-time data type in the chapters that we go over in this class, and that's kind of an omission. And so that's where in this toolkit PowerPoint, so the toolkit PowerPoint that you have, it has several general resources and topics that you need to know behind the scene with programming. And one of them is this date-time data type. By the end of the semester, I'll have you fill this out so that where you have blanks, it says look up and summarize below how do you use it, and then provide a link for more info. Those are examples of parts of the toolkit that you'll fill in. And so if you don't do anything until the end of class, you end up having to do quite a bit of work on the toolkit at the end. So that's why I like to bring it up early, so that as you go along, maybe you would, start filling it out. And the earlier you start filling it out, the more those resources will actually come into play to help you as you go along. Okay. The other thing that we are mentioning in the toolkit at this point is the great resources that are in there. Okay. In the toolkit, so I'll back up from the date-time data type portion. It has a lot of resources. If you're struggling, these would really help you out. You can run code and it will help explain what's wrong with it in some of these websites. Also, as we dig into formatting, you will find great resources online for formatting. And you'll find plenty of confusing things as well. So that's why I have actually put some links in here that really align with our lessons quite well. So that's some of the things you will find in that toolkit. Okay? We'll keep coming back to it as we go along. Lastly, we got the program development plan. And so with the program development plan, we spent quite a bit of time on it last week, and so we won't go over it as much, but this is the information from the template, and you will be filling out each section of that for the one that's due this week. And recall, we were trying to use it to start working on a sample program of a pizza ordering app or a guessing game. And, some people, as they went away from here, or as they sat in there for that, they were already thinking, like, how could I program this? And if you're thinking that way, you are developing the right mindset of continuous development and improvement. Good programs, from your own use of programs, they either evolve or they die out. And so, as programmers, we want to develop that habit of looking at our program as something that is in the process of improvement. Okay, so that will be it for this intro video, and next we'll be coming the formatting piece.